This podcast is a conversation by Julie Benetti and Susan Barbaro and is a production of VI Alliance, copyright 2019. And this chart-busting hit, Alone Leave Me, courtesy of New Threads, is available everywhere. We're talking about Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, and we're on part 2. Today, we're actually on number 46. When Tao rules on earth, one uses the racehorses to pull dung carts. When Tao has been lost on earth, war horses are raised on the green fields. And it continues on, and to me this stanza itself represents the importance of Tao. And it's in multi-layers again. It's almost as if with Tao things work as they work. Without Tao, other predicaments pop up, and you're in those other predicaments and you're not in Tao. And so either the desire for more occurs, or the desire to possess occurs. And once again, that's not in Tao. And especially, I love the last sentence. Therefore, the sufficiency of sufficiency is lasting sufficiency. And it's not relative to a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. It's relative to, I think, Tao's importance is just basically that it's eternal and it's ever-flowing and it's everlasting and it's always there. And it is. And that's the importance of it. And that's Tao.
I agree. When the Tao rules, things move more efficient, but they just run efficiently. But yeah, I agree with you. I see the same thing. So 47.
This one's kind of funky to me because, you don't, not only do you not have to go outside or do anything, you're complete just as you are. And knowing comes from just being. Because without going outdoors, you can know the world. Without looking out the window, you can see the utmost of Tao. And the further one goes, the more knowledge you increase within yourself. And also the man of calling doesn't, need to do anything to do anything. He knows everything.
So the other side that I see with this is the idea of going outdoors is actually, I use that as a symbol of just using your 5 senses. Your eyes, your ears, taste, smell. If you use those 5 senses, then that's going more outdoors and you're not understanding. But when you go within, then you understand everything. And here when he says the further out one goes, the lesser one's knowledge becomes. So the more that you rely solely on your 5 senses, which we know are flawed by science, then the more that you rely on your 5 senses, then you lose it more. So going inside is really where the answer is, going beyond the 5 senses.
And you said, too, the within, and I would say the within and without, too, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for number 48, the classic line, in non-action, nothing remains not done. I think this really gives a huge climactic sense to there's nothing to do. And the busyness part gets you into trouble, and the busyness part gets you out of Tao, and the busyness part is you extending yourself outside of Tao, thinking that there's something that has to be done that you have to do, and then that separates you from Tao.
So the question I have is the first 2 lines. Whosoever practices learning increases daily. Whosoever practices Tao decreases daily. So when I look at that, and I'm thinking, okay, so the Tao can't be practiced. It's just a state of mind or a state of being. So I think you can't practice it. And I'm kind of like shooting out of, from the hip with this one. So then, if you practice learning, and I think the learning is to be in the space of the Tao, is maybe what they're referring to.
I could go with that too. Yet it's funny, you focus on the practices, I focuses on the increases and decreases.
No, I understand because of it. But what you're practicing, I'm trying to think the difference between practicing learning versus practicing the Tao. One increases, one decreases, and I wasn't clear. But that was kind of what my question was. They're making a distinction between practicing the Tao and practicing learning. So I was kind of, when I said shooting from the hip, was my interpretation as to, because you can't practice the Tao. It's like practicing living, like you just live. But then you can practice learning, which would be in terms of living, learning to breathe deeper, learning to exercise your body, learning to feed yourself. Like you can practice living, but you can't practice living.
So the reason why I said you focused on practice was because to me, the two practices negate each other. And they negate themselves from the sentences, because to me, the focus is the increase and the decrease. And it's just that Tao is simplicity. So in the decreasing, that's the true Tao. That's simplicity.
So what's the okay, so you take out practices. So whosoever learns increases daily.
So with learning, okay, so you want to learn, you go to school, you go to this, you learn, you study, you get better, you get an increase of knowledge. And yet the sensation is, what are you increasing? Okay, you're learning. Yet I think the comparison with Tao is that the object is to be, we have talked about this before, to go to the simple. And the simple is the most extreme and the vast and the eternal and the utmost.
So you think that first line relates to the busyness. Whosoever practices learning increases daily. That's a little bit of the busyness then.
A little bit, possibly, yeah, sure. But the practices part, I think, is important, yet I almost kind of negate it to understand more the power of Tao, that it's in the simplicity, because he decreases and decreases until at last he arrives at non-action. That's true. You practice something, you're actually doing an action.
No, and
that's kind of funny. It's like, well, there's like double negatives, but there's no negatives in there.
That's why I thought those first two lines were, because I completely understand what you're talking about the non-action, but I was like, that was because I always think those little sort of those one-liners sounds like you kind of yada over it, like, oh yeah, but I think there's like gold in those their words,
right? There's
and I think it's that whole idea of practicing learning increases and practicing Tao decreases. So you hear it two different ways, and we're shooting from the hip here. Julie and I don't have scripted lines here, and that's why sometimes we hesitate, but
we're also talking about the energy and the vibration of what comes at us, and we talk about how we go to two different extremes and we meet in the middle. And that's why I said it's funny you pick on the practices, and the only thing I focused on was the increase, the decrease, and it makes sense because it goes to simplicity, that goes to Tao, and yet you're right, there's truth in the practicing. Is you're amassing knowledge, yet does that amass judgment and other things?
What's interesting is yet throughout all of this, I mean, Lao Tzu talks about decreasing and doing, and yet to me I hear that as every word that's used was specifically chosen. That's why I'm kind of getting caught in the words, because I think the words were particular. There was no extra. I tend to go on and on. Sometimes I talk, Lord, and God knows you do too. So, but I don't think these words were like just run on sentences here. I think every word was specifically picked and chosen, and that's why I kind of look at each word with it, because the word was chosen. Practices was chosen to be in these sentences. So I think there's some. That's why I try to what's the significance? Why would someone use? I mean, that's what I look at a lot of this is, why would they use that word? And we talked about it in the break about the syntax. These, when you learn a new vocabulary word, you understand it in the context that it was explained, and how someone, when they taught it to you, it was, and so you always have that little bit of a bias, if I want to call it that, in when you hear a word. So when I go back and I look it up, I'm trying to clear any bias I had towards a word, any inkling as to how I see it. Because so I said, I don't think it says the practices was specifically put in there. And so that's why. Anyways.
I agree that all the words are specifically put in there, and they've been translated specifically to these words because there's a vibration to them, and they mean whatever they mean. I think it's very interesting which ones pop out at you at what times. And as you flow through it, I think there's an actual practice in the flow, which is like Tao, that as you flow through this and it sticks on you, the increase, the decrease, non-action, yet practicing is action. And it's like, okay, we're at non-action. Nothing, remains not done. There's your negatives. Yet when you turn, and you read the next part of it, the realm can only be attained if one remains free of busyness. The busy are not fit to attain the realm. And so possibly meaning in the sense of Tao, you're busy, you're increasing your learning daily, and yet what you really need to do is to go into a simplification and just be.
Okay, so let's do 49.
Mm-hmm. Okay, 49. For me, this is kind of the description of the man of calling. Here he is, how to be. And I get a sense of just compassion. He lives quietly, he accepts all, he's with the Tao, and that's how the man of calling operates, and that's how the Tao moves.
So I the other part I got is that when it says, to the good, I am good, to the non-good, I am also good. To the faithful, I am faithful, to the unfaithful, I am also faithful. The way I look at it is his view of himself has nothing to do with whatever anybody else thinks. He's good because he is good. Mm-hmm. And he is faithful because he knows, he believes he is faithful. So whether someone says you're faithful or someone says you're not faithful, because of course people see him in regards to their own self. And I think I read this as just his perception is his perception, and he does not allow other people's perception of him to affect him.
That's interesting, because focusing on that, so that's occurring, yet he's not focusing on what the perception of others are, and he's not taking that internally, because he's staying with the Tao and he's living very quietly in the world, and it's irregardless.
And he's staying in his own perception. Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I also read it, is what you said. But again, once again, it always comes back to the individual person. Mm-hmm. And he just doesn't, if someone's faithful or unfaithful, and however they see him, he knows who he is.
And it's funny because, he surprises people. They look for him and listen out for him with surprise. Yeah. Yet the man of calling accepts them all as his children.
Right. Yep. Okay.
Okay, number 50.
So before we get too deep into this, I have a question. If I do believe a lot of this talks about perception. And if you believe you're in harm's way, you'll be in harm's way no matter where you are. And but the question I have is, he uses a lot of numbers. Now, I'm a big numbers person. But he talks 3 out of 10 are companions of life. 3 out of 10 are companions of death. 3 out of 10 are men who live and thereby move towards the place of death. What is the reason for this? Because they want to create an increase of their lives. So my question becomes 3 out of 10. What do you think 3 out of 10 is?
So I would go back to the first sentence. Going out is life. Going in is death. And the vibration of that will lead into because I kept reading that and looking at it and reading it, and all I got was the breath. Going out is life, going in is death. And I went into the breath, and then I thought, okay, the space between. What's the space between? And then so I looked at the numbers as well. 3 out of 10, is a companion of life. And then I took, okay, so then there's 3 others. It's funny, we were talking about word problems before. There's 3 others out of those same 10. He didn't say it that way, but they're companions for death. And then there's 3 others out of those 10 are men who actually live. And then I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's one left. There's one left. That's 369. There's one left. And so what is the reason for that? Because as all that is occurring with those, what is the reason for that? I went over to the next part of it, and then he starts expressing, I have heard that whosoever knows how to live life well wanders through the land. And I thought, okay, that's possibly the one.
Sure.
And so as this occurs, basically the one is in the Tao and in the space between, and that's how I sensed it as the breath.
This is
the
interesting.
Space between, and that's why there's no mortal spot.
That's actually very interesting.
And it was kind of like a mathematical word problem, but also a pictorial
3 are focused on life, 3 are focused on death. three are living, yet one is in the Tao, and he can do all that. Fascinating. Nice job, Julie.
You as well. Number 51. I just see a whole amalgamation of verbs here. Which is funny because, I'm not talking about the to-do or anything, but I almost feel like there's a description of the actual activation or the movement of Tao it generates and the flow of it. And life nourishes, environment shapes, influence is complete, yet all beings honor Tao and cherish life, and Tao itself is honored, life is cherished. And then you go into Tao generates, and then all the verbs come, makes, grows, cares, completes, keeps, covers, protects.
So when I read that, I read it as the Tao generates, and then life flourishes, and all these great things happen. And in there, it doesn't say man gets up and gets his coffee and brushes his teeth and eats and then goes and, plows fields and does this. It says everything, life's cherished, everybody's great, everything moves. And my question becomes, can we just believe that? I mean, can we read this? And I guess the question becomes, really, can you believe that this is the truth?
And can you get to the space of actually experiencing that as the truth?
And so that to me it's almost like someone saying, look at how beautiful life can be. And we're like, I don't believe that. and I think, that really becomes, again, the work, the practice, the learning is moving into a space like that. So, okay, do you have any?
No, that's
okay. That's good.
52. Okay, number 52. I just get from this is a sense of eternity in Tao. And when it starts out with the world has a beginning that is the mother of the world, whosoever finds the mother, in order to know the sons, whosoever knows the sons and returns to the mother. I feel like this is a sense of a vibration of the mother being the source.
So you find the source like to know the self. I was thinking on that as the mother is being, I'm going to say God, and the sons is being people.
Right. Yep, that's the same.
And then you go between,
and then you return to the source. Although you go and you get to the source and you know the people, you still have to return to the source because that's what you're of. And the idea of, it's funny down here, the idea, whosoever closes his mouth and shuts his gates, he will not be troubled all his life long.
So I just think the gates is, the mouth and the gates of the eyes.
Oh, okay, sure.
I was thinking more like the guy, if you can, you won't be in trouble if you close your mouth and you shut your eyes. Which again is going more deeper instead of looking outward, it's more looking inward.
Right. And that's, even justified further where he says, whosoever opens his mouth and wants to set his affairs in order, he cannot be helped all his life long. That's the constant blabber. Yeah. Are they really blabbing for the drama? Are they blabbing because they want to fix something? Or they really want to, or they just want to blab? They really don't want help. And in that sense, then he goes into it feels like into the sense of, see the simplest, the smallest, and be clear, and then you'll be with Tao.
So what do you think it means by this is called the hull of eternity?
Well, if one uses one's light in order to return to this clarity, one does not endanger one's person. And so it's staying, I think it's, it's almost like the womb, it's almost like the birth, it's like staying, it's going back to the source. As we said before, going back to the beginning of what he said about the world has a beginning, that is the mother of the world. Whosoever finds the mother, you go back to the source. It's like a cyclical thing going on in which is, eternity. The cyclical thing of, there's no ending.
Okay.
53. 53, I get a real sensation of focus. What's the focus? And if you really know what it means to live in the great Tao, then it is above all busyness that I fear. So the busyness is the part that creates the lack of focus and the confusion. The character of busyness that enters into the scene, and whether it be, issues, problems, situations, things that occur that sometimes we say the distractions, so you don't end up seeing what's right in front of your face.
So I agree with you. And the only thing I would add to that is He talks about, you can walk the great streets are beautiful and smooth, but people for the side roads, and it's got all these bumps and all these things are going on and whatever. And he calls it, these rules, they're there, meaning those little side roads, rules confusion, not government. We think all these rules are helping to govern, and what it's really doing is creating the confusion. And it's almost, this is a beautiful description. It's like if you're looking to try to find someplace, it's always nice to be on the highway. You're kind of up high a lot of times, it's open, and you just cruise down. People get off and they, get caught up in all these side roads, and, and there's people on it, there's, people parking, there's street. And, we think that the side road is really where, this is government and this is what we're supposed to do and these are all the rules, and we're thinking it helps us to live a more civilized life. Yet, when you're in the energy, you do good things because you're in a different level of connection, and those side roads in the description is just confusion.
And it's funny because this takes me into everything that we write about, that when we go into a little bit of the fun way of quantum physics and relating it to people and the other materials that we've written, and you look at, we've looked at entropy and we've looked at what occurs, and then we looked at chaos moving into, kind of just order. And yet, where is Tao in that? And that the natural state of things is chaos and uncertainty in that. And so that gives a great, that relates completely to the description you were giving about the people preferring the side roads.
Right, because you think that's where the fun is, that's where the distractions is. And let's think of it as a side road. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but, if you're trying to get to point A to point B, those side roads can take you completely off course. And that doesn't mean you're not going to get at your destination. And but let's be clear what it is.
Okay, number 54 is a little bit of a long one. There's others that have been longer. Yet to me, it really expresses the nature of living in the Tao. And, what is well planted will not be torn up. What is well kept will not escape. Whosoever leaves his memory to his sons and grandsons will not fade away. And I think in that sense, it's almost, to me at least, a vibration of where you are is the truth. And by this truth, you have awareness of it, and you knowing it, you should get the sensation of the nature of the world.
Okay, so this is where we take out our bats and our swords and we start fighting. So when I look at this, I'm like, okay, here we go with the whosoever. I knew you were going to do that. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, whosoever leaves his memory to his sons and grandsons will not fade away. Baloney. Okay, because I have said this, and I've got kids, and one day I'll have grandkids, and I'll know my grandchildren. Eventually, I don't care who you are, your true memory is gone. Who you are goes away. People don't know who you are. People, generations from now, maybe they'll know my name. Maybe they'll see a picture of me. Hell, maybe they'll listen to the broadcast. This podcast, yet they still don't know me. I mean, to know someone is to know them, and you can't know someone by just, even this podcast, people don't know us. And then it goes into, whoever molds his person, his life becomes true. That's not true, because we don't know what truth is. Whoever molds his family, his life becomes complete. People do not make completion. So if I take that little stanza and then I go with the next one, therefore, by your own person, judge the person of the other. So I kind of take it as, you mold your family, your life becomes complete. You use that to judge other people. You use who you are to judge other people. Whoever molds his country, his life will become rich. And then down here it says, by your country, judge the country of others. So you sit here and define what you think you're going to do to make your life complete, to make life become rich, to become broad. You decide and then you know what? You use that to judge yourself. Don't use that because you're judging other people. It's like to thine own self be true. So I take this as like, look at yourself before you start judging others. whoever molds this person, his life becomes true. That's an opinion. I think that's what bothers me about this. So, these sound like opinions to me. And the Tao's and energy is not opinions.
So remember when we said if you get a text and say, we joke about this in the morning and I say, hey, good morning. I've been up since 5 working.
Yeah.
And even my response right now when I say to you, I've been up since 5 working. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? I was just saying, oh, hi, good morning. I've been up since 5 working. And so there's a tone there, and especially it occurs in texts, and it definitely can occur in translations. So I don't get this as a truth. I mean, whosoever molds his person, his life becomes true. I get this as a sensation, as a description.
So whoever molds his family, his life becomes complete. What the heck's that
it's
mean,
not.
then?
It's a.
Do you believe a person makes
like a
you complete?
Story? No, it's like a story. That's not. He's
so
not.
So if you don't have
truth.
a family,
you're seeing this as dogma. It's not dogma. It's vibration and energy.
No,
so if there's a person who molds his community, his life grows. I mean, this is what whoever sees, what is well kept will not escape. This is what he's talking about. What is well planted is not torn up. And so he's not saying this is what you need to do. This is what occurs. This is the nature of living in Tao. What he says afterwards in the next stanza, therefore, as you see all these things occur, whosoever molds the world, his life will become broad. Is that true? He's not saying it's
But then he says, by your world, judge the world of others. I mean, he's talking all about judgment here. Right after this, I just read that as the opposite. That's all I can say. I just read that as again, I'm not saying I know this. But I think about it, and I'm like, I can understand what you're saying. Yet I look at that, and I'm thinking, Then he goes into judgment.
So what's really funny is, to me, the most important parts of 54 are the last 2 lines. How do I know the nature of the world? Just through this. The nature of the world is all this stuff that occurs, whether it be right or wrong, how things are judged, what occurs. He's not saying all that. Once again, this is short, segmented translations. He's not going into this whole story and saying this happened to a guy and this is how he was judged and that's what happens in the world. He's saying here's the nature of the world, and in expressing the nature of the world, he's expressing the nature of living in Tao. And in the non-expression of it.
Whosoever molds, this is a verb. Mold your family, his person, his family, molds his community, molds his country, molds the world. And we continually say that the Tao is about getting simpler and simpler and doing less and doing less. So why would it say, so to me, the person who's molding all of these things is not allowing the Tao to just naturally occur. They're out there creating, molding it.
Exactly. So now go to the last sentence. How do I know the nature of the world? So then how do you know the nature of the world? Do you know it just through this, all that stuff that he says up there? Or do you know it because you're just in the Tao?
So I'm saying all of this is sarcastic, and you're saying he's saying all this in the last 2 lines of sarcasm. How do I know the nature of the world? Just through this? Like, just through this? Seriously, that's how you're going to know the nature of the world.
Yeah, and that's the nature of living in Tao, is what is not expressed.
But this is all expressed. This is all expression.
But the non-expressed is Tao.
Right, so therefore, that's the joke of it. Is that you mold this and you mold your community and then you judge everyone, and that's how you know the nature. It's almost like sarcastic because you can't, because you're just saying you created, it's like all facade. You mold what you want it to look like and then you judge everyone, and so that's how you live life. So it's to me, this is sarcastic.
And that could be how others, and if you reflect on that self-awareness of yourself, is that what you're doing in your here and now? Is that what others are doing in your here and now? So then are you in Tao?
Right. So so we are saying the same thing.
Right, we're saying the same thing.
Because I'm like, wait a second. Okay, yes. I'm like, hold on. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
So again.
Very cool. So I'm going to say good job, Julie.
Yeah, you as well. So again, it's funny because, so what is the truth then? Where you are is your truth. Wow. Is that where you want to be? Is that really what it is? Are you in the Tao?
So or are you too busy worrying about, your Facebook likes?
Yeah.
And then you're judging how many people, oh God, how many likes do we get on this podcast, Julie? Let me look back at someone else's podcast that talked about,
is that
so did they get the same? That's what I'm saying. It's garbage.
And is that the nature of the world? So all of that is the nature of the world?
So I hope you're all listening to this. I get it.
And how do I know the nature of this world? I mean, that's huge. Just through this.
Well, my question is, it's sarcasm. Just through this? Just through this? So keep listening. We got some more really good stuff coming up.
As we continue on with Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching in the next segments. Thank you for listening to this production from EI Alliance. Check out our Amazon authors pages for books and podcasts. Find New Threads music and their latest album on iTunes, Spotify, and newthreads.us.